So, welcome to another adventure with Getting Lost. And we're actually along the Singapore River today. In our last video, we were actually at the mouth of the Singapore River, which is on the other side. And walk past the two bridges, and this time we're going to explore the the civic area or the governmental offices of the old British government in Singapore. And in front of us is the Anderson Bridge, then the Fullerton Hotel, which is over here, and right next to it is the old commercial area of Singapore, or present day Raffles Place. But most of the old commercial buildings are gone, all replaced by high tall skyscrapers. And cross the river using the Kavanaugh Bridge to this area here, which is the old civic area of Singapore, where the governmental office of the British government used to be. And the main building here is this building called the Empress Place building, which is now presently a museum called the Asian Civilization Museum. And right next to it is Empress Lawn, a small little greenery area with lots of maybe a few sculptures, obelisks, and maybe some monuments. But what we're going to look at mostly at this time now, is this building here, which is the Empress Place building, built in 1827. And so this building, Empress Place building, sits right next to the Singapore River, and it has witnessed the changes along this river. In the past, this river used to be the lifeblood of Singapore, because the mouth of the Singapore River used to be the port of Singapore, and this area here used to be filled with tongkangs and bumboats and people crossing and doing business everywhere, which is very different from what it is now. Much quieter. But this building, if it could tell tales, I'm sure it could tell many tales. So the chief designer, Colonel Engineer Major John F.A. McNair, used convict labor to actually build this building. And once it was completed in 1867, government departments from Maxwell House, which is nearby, moved in and occupied this building. So here along the Singapore River, there is something I need to show you that is very historical and very important to Singapore's history, and that is coming up right next to here. And it is this statue. If you look at the plaque on the statue, it says on this site where this statue stands, it is believed that this was the site along the banks of the Singapore River that Raffles is believed to have landed in Singapore. So this statue actually marks the landing site of Sir Stamford Raffles in Singapore, and they actually put up this statue in 1972. And so the Empress Place building is actually a neo-Palladian mansion, or designed in that style, and the building next to it is also in the same style. It's called the Art Houes, or more commonly known as the Old Parliment House. And this building here was also built in 1827 and is one of the oldest government buildings in Singapore, probably the oldest surviving building in Singapore. And it gets its name because the Singapore Parliament used to be there from 1965 to 1999, until they moved to the new building. But what is more interesting is this building here, which is right next to Asian Civilisation Museum and the old Empress Place. So here I am. This is the Asian Civilisation Museum, and this is Victoria Concert Hall. And this place is also another very interesting place. I will bring you in to have a look on the outside, because during this timing, all these government places are all closed. You know why. But I'm going to just show you around the outside of the building, which is also very interesting. This building is actually the Victoria Theatre and Concert Hall, which is a performing arts centre in the central area of Singapore. And it was built, or the oldest part of the building was built in 1862. And look at this very ornate grille along that on the gates on the side of the building here. So this building originally used to be two different buildings, a town hall and also a concert hall. But then, due to many renovations being done to the building, these two buildings were actually connected together with a clock tower and a common corridor joining both areas together. So in the past, this used to be two different buildings, now one big building. And this statue that's in front of the concert hall, which is a statue of Sir Stamford Raffles, this statue actually has a very interesting history. It used to stand at the Padang, and it was installed in 1887. Then in 1919, it was moved here. Next door is this building called the Singapore Cricket Club, which was built in 1884. And even though there's a cricket club in Singapore, unfortunately, cricket is not a popular sport in Singapore. Very few Singaporeans play cricket. And as we continue onwards, in front of us now is the old Supreme Court building. And this place used to be the former courthouse of the Supreme Court of Singapore before it moved out of this building into a newer building. And as you walk along this building, you'll notice the massive scale of this building. This building is probably a neoclassical Baroque revival style building with a dome. And this building was built in the 1930s, but still looks very impressive. One thing good about it is this building and the building next to it has been converted into the National Gallery of Singapore and is open to the public. There's a lot of different exhibits and stuff you can come and see here and visit the interior of the building. But this building here is a very, very beautiful building. And if you come here, you can walk past, take some pictures. And then there's also exhibitions inside, some cafes, some restaurants too. A lot of things you can do here. A very interesting place to come and see and play. And right next to this place, and next to the old Supreme Court building, is the former City Hall building, or more commonly known as the Municipal Building. And it was established in 1856 to oversee the maintenance of public infrastructure in Singapore and the provision of public utilities. And prior to land reclamation in the 20th century, this building, the Municipal Building, was part of the waterfront, and it could view vessels approaching and sailing past the harbour or the port of Singapore, and it's said that ships coming in could see this building from afar. And right next to the former City Hall, there's another building which is also a very historical building in Singapore, which is called the St. Andrew's Cathedral. This cathedral is not the first building that was built on this site. This is the second building. The first building was built in 1836, whereas this present building you see now was built only in 1864, but it's still a very impressive building. And right opposite from the former Supreme Court and former City Hall is this empty piece of land. And this piece of land is a popular place for people to play cricket rugby, mainly those two sports. But it's a very big, very open, very empty piece of land in land scarce Singapore. But this piece of land is not left empty, but there's actually a very important significance to this empty piece of land. And so this empty piece of land, which is called the Padang, which is Malay for field, is a open area in the middle of downtown, in the core of the central business area of Singapore. And on one side you have the Singapore Cricket Club, on the other side the Singapore Recreation Club. And it's just an empty piece of land. But this empty piece of land has a lot of significance because of its location. And this area has been witness to many events, historical events, like the first ever National Day Parade was held here in 1966. The surrender of the Japanese to the British after World War II was also held at the Padang. And then recent history, the 200-year bicentennial anniversary of the founding of Singapore was also held here. So this area, even though it's an empty piece of land, has lots of historical significance. And before we leave you, this will be the end of this part of the video. I hope you enjoyed our history lesson around the civic area of Singapore during British colonial times. And as per usual, please help me by liking my video, sharing my video, and also subscribing to my channel. And don't forget to join me for my next adventure. I will see you around when we do our next adventure together.